All About Beer receives underwriting support from the New Glarus Brewing Company. They understand the importance of independent journalism in the beer space, and their support helps fund original work. Learn how you can affordably support journalists by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl, and as we ease into a new year, let's get some perspective on what might be involved with the drink space in 2025. In a moment, I'll be joined by my colleague Andy Crouch and Lauren Buzzeo, the editor and publisher of Full Pour. But before we get into it, I hope you'll consider supporting All About Beer. There are a number of ways you can do it, through our Patreon, through our underwriting, and through advertising. The only way that we can continue to bring original shows like this, the All About Beer podcast, as well as articles on our site, is through your support. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. And thanks to this episode's sponsors.
Attention brewers, registration is now open for the 2025 Best of Craft Beer Awards. This is a BJCP sanctioned competition judged by fellow brewers and industry leaders. It uses a unique set of style guidelines that champions harmonious and dynamic beers. Held in beautiful Central Oregon, it's the third largest professional brewing competition in North America and is an opportunity to have your hard work evaluated and rewarded. In addition to traditional and specialty beer styles, new this year is the hop water category. Register your beers through January 31, 2025 by visiting bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register. Don't delay. Learn more and get your beers signed up by visiting bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register.
Today's episode is sponsored by Stomp Stickers. Stomp is a proud member of the Brewers Association that produces a wide variety of printed brewery products, such as beer labels, keg collars, coasters, beer boxes, and much more. Stomp's website features an easy-to-use digital design tool, low-quantity orders, fast turnaround times, and free domestic shipping. Visit stompstickers.com and use code BREWER for 15% off of your first order. A reminder, please visit allaboutbeer.com for original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. You can listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. You can also follow All About Beer on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at All About Beer. We're also on Blue Sky now. And as always, you can keep up with all of the smoked beer news and releases by checking out This Week in Rauk Beer by searching the group on Facebook, or you can follow at TW Rauk Beer on Threads and Instagram. Glassware and apparel is available too on allaboutbeer.com/merch. And a few bucks goes a long way to help fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. So again, I'll point you towards allaboutbeer.com/support. 2024 was a tough year for drinks. 2025 also looks to have its challenges. So to put it all in perspective, I asked Andy Crouch, the publisher of All About Beer and my colleague, as well as Lauren Buzzeo, the editor and publisher of Full Pour, to share insights, experiences, and emerging trends that will hopefully put this year ahead into perspective. Here's our conversation. Well, thanks to you both for being here. And I wanted to start off about experiences in 2024. And Andy, since all you do is go to Notch and drink the same beer,
Yes.
I'm going to start with Lauren, who actually
That's smart.
did some interesting things in 2024. But as you think back on last year, were there experiences, drinks you had, places you went that have really stuck with you and informed your coverage or inspired you to, go down new rabbit holes?
I mean, that's the exciting thing about what we do, guys, right? Like there's always new things and there's always inspiration to be found in a glass, if you will, wherever we go. So I can't really say that there were too many actual, in-person experiences that wowed me or left me, diving further into a rabbit hole on a drink or a style or a place or what have you. But there were definitely a ton of great conversations. And I think that's what I'll carry forward with me. That's what stuck with me this year. And that's what I'm definitely going to carry forward with me into the new year, which is all of those, again, great stories, great makers, people, stories of resilience and innovation, and really just, trying to do what feels right in whatever definition and sense of that word and concept makes sense to that maker, and in this case, brewers. So yeah, I mean, again, I think for me, it's all about the stories, and the people who are making delicious drinks that keep me going, certainly, and I'm excited for in the year ahead.
I like that. Andy, were there any days at Notch that stood out more than others to you?
They really do blend together when you go there as often as I do. I mean, this is not really my fault. I have been,
By the way, I love that the All About Beer Instagram wrap up is just the same picture from Notch on 45 different days.
which is great because you should see the amount of other pictures that I just decided not to post because I didn't want it to just devolve into even further of a Notch fanboy club. But yeah, I mean, it's not exactly my fault when a world class lager brewery opens up a 12-minute drive from my house and it's essentially a European beer garden. But we'll put the great stuff that the folks at Notch do aside. This year, with my kids getting a little bit older, I actually was able to get out and about in the world a little bit more, not as much as the olden days, and I'm working back towards that. But for me, I think my highlight of the year was both John and I took a trip to the Atlanta area earlier this year for a festival thrown by the great people at Good Word Brewing Company. And I can't remember the name of the town because I always confuse it with
Duluth,
the next
Georgia.
town. Okay,
Yeah.
it's not the other one. It's not Decatur.
It's not Decatur.
Which I said on your.
Decatur has Brickstore Pub,
Okay.
which is also amazing.
Well, I still
Luke
apologize.
has- yeah.
I still apologize for making that air live on the air on your podcast that I was hosting at the time. But we went down to this little beers festival, and it was just that first taste of good weather again. People are out in shorts. My kids were there for about 5 minutes, and then I waved goodbye to them as they took off with my wife. And then I just got to enjoy great lager beer in the sun, talking to smart people, as Lauren was saying, and those conversations were wonderful. But beyond that festival, which I think was particularly good, I was really kind of struck by kind of the beer scene in and around Atlanta. It's not a city that it's one of these cities that just somehow has escaped my radar over the years. I've flown through it a million times, but have only been once or twice in the last decade or two. But the beer scene there is growing. It's interesting. There's a lot of smaller producers that are doing some really interesting stuff, and it can go from traditional German and Czech style lager to just over the top, cereal infused sour beer. It runs kind of a whole gamut, and it was kind of an exciting culture in a town that was really starting to grow more with craft beer in particular. And then it was also my first chance to get to Brickstore. It's a pub I've always wanted to go to over my entire career, and have just not managed to get there. And so did manage to get there. Unfortunately, it was with yourself and Don Tess. So I mean, there were trade-offs, but
God.
but otherwise it was a great trip, and one I hope to do again in the future soon.
Wow. Well, I hope you enjoyed Table for One at that point. God.
Yeah. I will.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you will. That's yeah. Lauren, how I know you spend time in the wine space and alternative beverages and even cocktails and whiskey and all that. Have you seen an evolution of events in that space in the last couple of years?
In terms of just beverages overall, like all
Yeah.
beverages? Yeah,
or
definitely.
what you've been covering, because Good Word, that fest that Andy was talking about, is this brewery run, small, kind of intimate. It's not big hulking convention center. It's not everybody looking to get what's your strongest, or to get absolutely blotto. It was really about community and tasting and celebrating well-made beers. And I'm wondering if you've seen that. I know the wine world has always been a little bit more maybe sophisticated on that. But has there been an evolution of the way that these events are run from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, don't use the sophisticated
Yeah, I know.
word.
I
Like, come
immediately
on,
regret.
man.
I immediately
I
regretted it
couldn't
when I
believe that
said
came
it.
out of your
Yeah,
mouth.
We all simultaneously cringe.
Just
I know.
cringe.
It's cringe. I know. I know.
Look, we're all classy. We can all be friends, and I think
Yeah.
maybe that
Perceived
sentiment.
or forced sophistication. Yeah. Yeah.
No, but maybe that idea and that sentiment can be applied to maybe your question. So I think that there's been a lot more cross category collaboration, and even just in terms of producer portfolios, we're certainly seeing a ton of diversification. And I think that that's driving a lot of these fests to become, or events to become, more inclusive to drinkers of all tastes, right? Um, and I think that that's a wonderful thing. There's pluses and minuses, and we could definitely have a podcast alone just about all of those. But I think the name of the game of welcoming and inclusivity, and again having something for everyone. I love to see all of these different beverages living together in one happy place. And that is, I mean, as you guys know, basically the ethos of Full Pour and what we do in our content, which is celebrating all of these beverage spaces coming together. And if you're a fan of one, chances are you are drinking cross category and you are enjoying beverages of all kinds. So I know you're not a wino. I know you're not super sophisticated, John, but I know that you
Certainly not.
occasionally have a glass of wine or a cocktail or maybe an infused drink. We might still be working on that, but
We're working towards it. Yeah.
but the point is the opportunities are there. And, as parents, just as adults, there's different lifestyle situations and circumstances where we find ourselves reaching for different things. So again, I think more people are sort of becoming a little bit savvy to the shifting landscape and the different opportunities and needs of drinkers, and meeting them where they are. And offering, different stuff brings more to the table, and the more the merrier.
Yeah. How have you seen the THC CBD infused market grow in the last year?
I mean, it's grown like crazy. There's still so much opportunity and room for growth, but it's also still a very volatile area, to be honest, because there's just so much back and forth with regulations, and what people can and can't do, where they can sell, where they can't, shipping. There's just a farm bill being up for extension or a redraft renewal. There's just a lot that's up in the air, that's constantly in flux. But I think on top of all of the innovation that we've seen in that segment of the drinks market, I will venture to say that I think that it's been a life preserver for a lot of smaller breweries that are looking to keep their bottom line functioning, to keep doing what they do and brewing delicious beers. And in some cases, we've definitely seen some of these alternative beverages, infused beverages, non-alc kombucha, assorted others, if you will, come into serious play, to help keep brewers, going, and again offering something for everyone during this somewhat tumultuous time.
So for the ones that you've tasted through on CBD, THC, et cetera, what are the ones that you like, and how are they doing it right versus maybe some of the others? Like I think we're deep enough in it at this point where you can start to see who might be leaders of the pack for whatever reason beyond marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, the good ones, in your professional opinion, what are they doing to stand out among, everybody who's rushing in the door right now?
Yeah. So it's kind of a tough question, because what is great to me and what I might be looking for can be very obviously different from what other people are looking for, same as any beer styles. So it's really tough for me to answer that question at this point in time, because we are still in such an early phase of acceptance and adaptation of these beverages into just our social drinking landscape, that I don't want to I'd be nervous to actually start, maligning any certain type of category or drink over another, because at this stage of the game, it's still come to the table and try these out, So do I think that we'll reach a peak, and are we even possibly approaching a point of perhaps the fizzy yellow stuff of the infused world? Yeah, we're getting there. But do I think that that conversation is fully formed and really necessary to start diving into yet? I'm not sold on that. I'm still just trying to bring people to the table and give this category and these drinks a shot. I will say the ones that I think are having success, and again, that's measured in very different ways, but because of the difficult and state by state varying regulatory landscape of these beverages and availability of them, I think the ones that are being successful are the ones that are catering to their local market and that really are, again, speaking to their community of consumers as it almost already exists. And sure, branching out and increasing that from there with these new beverages, but they're really speaking to their organic and existing community, and not necessarily trying to, create something on a national level. There are ones that are certainly trying, but again, I think right now, what I love seeing again are the local companies really sticking to their community and offering something of service to their local customers.
I like that.
Lauren, I have a question for you there along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of experience with the THC and CBD beverages. I've had a few that have either been provided to me or I've had them in Minnesota where they obviously have that very unusual loophole law
Yeah.
that allowed a lot of the breweries to like Indeed to jump on and start serving. In my experience with them, they often, and it's very limited experience, is they just sort of taste like not it's a little bit like hop water sometimes. It's just
Yeah.
not really great tasting seltzer.
Yeah.
And if it is just a liquid delivery device for THC, I'm wondering, if I'm supposed to be enjoying the flavor of the beverage, or maybe it's the point of consuming it over a greater period of time. I'm having trouble personally determining what occasion it would be where I'd want that versus maybe just taking an edible, even bites at a time.
Yeah, well, I think the greatest advantage to infused beverages is their faster onset offset time. So it is more like an alcoholic drink
Hmm.
experience as opposed to an edible that takes much longer to work through your
Yeah.
system
Yep.
because of the development in nanoemulsification and how these beverages are made and the extraction. That is the experience that you're getting. So I think that is number one right now in terms of education and understanding is this is a social beverage like
Hmm.
what you're used to consuming and how you are used to experiencing the effects of those beverages. So these stories of, one time I had a brownie and then 2 hours later I lost my
Sure.
mind, that's not what you're going to experience with these drinks that are rapid on and offset. So I think that that's sort of education point number one, and why I say that we're still in this early phase of adaptation as people start to understand. And then from there, what's the need? What's the use case? Certainly, again, it varies by individual, but if you're out and you are, you're being social, you're meeting some friends, whatever may be going on, and you want to partake, but perhaps not have the effects of alcohol for any reason, whether you're abstaining, whether it's medical, whether, whatever it may be, this is another option that in the doses that a lot of these beverages are now being produced at, and certainly are more readily available at, you're talking 2 milligrams, 5 milligrams,
Hmm.
10 milligrams is really what you're seeing tops in terms of, common availability and not through like a dispensary. These are micro doses.
Yeah.
It's like having, a 2% lager for a lot of people. It's a very minimal experience. So I think from just a social element and an enjoyment opportunity for people who, again, might be abstaining from alcohol for whatever reason, want to partake in a social drink, but maybe want to do something a little bit beyond a non-alc beer or beverage or soda, whatever it may be, this is that sweet spot space. And in terms of flavors, you're right. There's, again, especially in the seltzer space, there's some that are fantastic. It tastes like a great seltzer. There's some that are not so great
Yeah.
and maybe taste a little bit more artificial, same as we see in every sort of beverage category. But there are also, infused beverages that are either emulating cocktails or doing something, more like a shrub or something really interesting. So I think that there is a wide range of flavor and opportunity to be explored. Right now, a lot of people are going for this sort of easy, accessible delivery of a seltzer profile, but it's definitely not the end all be all of the deliciousness that's out there to be
Excellent.
enjoyed.
Good.
That's good to hear. And it sounds like, I mean, it's poised for evolution as well.
Yeah. Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, and if you're talking to me, and I think the next step of this conversation is talking about, what strain are you using? What terpene profile are you preserving in the extraction that you want to include in the drink, more along the lines of a hop water, right? If you're trying to get certain characteristics of a strain, how are you doing that? What can we see? Are you using live rosin? So there's a lot of additional rabbit holes that you could fall down once you get into the world. But for now, let's just get everyone into the world.
Yeah, but it's interesting though, right? Because I mean, I've talked to Jeff O'Neill at Industrial Arts, who has been going into this and is really focusing on those strains and the science and the proper dosing. And it's not just, I think, that hard seltzer approach for a while of like, yeah, let's just take mango flavor and throw it in water and here's mango seltzer.
Yeah.
It's the real science behind it. Those seem to be, at least to me, the ones that will resonate with people going forward. Like when there's real thought behind it and not just chasing a fad or playing fast and loose with some of this.
For sure. Intentional, thoughtful, research and development. Absolutely. That's gonna be what gives people a long game here and a product that's really gonna stand out. So yeah, in terms of specific sourcing possibilities, strain identification, or even, if you look at the BBC and their experimentation with Teapot up in Canada, not available in the US, but they are doing a lot of work
Boston
with
beer,
that.
yeah.
Boston beer. Yeah. They are doing a lot of work with that line too, they have tea-based beverages, but they're looking to, match different strains with different tea types that are more conducive to either a more energized experience or a more calming experience, whether it's chamomile versus black tea, and matching strains, different cannabis strains with that. So there is a lot of definitely exciting potential and exploration on the horizon.
Andy, one of the things we've talked about a lot this year is that intentionality. And I think Notch is a great example of that, of the brewer that knows exactly what they want to be and they're constantly tinkering and striving. And I mean, up in Boston, where you are in that area, are you seeing other people follow that lead? Like I know Good Word has been doing it. I know, when we're out in Colorado and we're drinking at Bierstadt, they're brewing with intentionality. We seem to sort of gravitate to these places, but I'm wondering, like, when you're out and not at Notch, if you're seeing that kind of intentionality start to creep in as people start to batten down the hatches a little bit for what's probably going to be a rough 2025.
Yeah, I'm seeing it certainly as I travel around the country. Boston, in its own right, is an odd beer scene. It always has been an odd beer scene. I'm not going to go on at length about it, but it just, tonight, for example, I'm going to the, closing the last night of service at Cambridge Brewing Company, which has been in business for more than 35 years. And so it's been a, stalwart brew pub on the East Coast, and certainly a focal point in the Boston beer scene. And that's closing. And we're seeing a lot of breweries close, or a lot of breweries consolidate with one another, to the point, and very few, if actually none, open in recent years, if they're not an offshoot of other places. So Boston's not a good example of I think, what's happening around the country, because for its own reasons, it's just a very weird and kind of backwards, beer scene in a lot of senses. But I can certainly say, when I'm going around the country, whether and frankly, my travel is not as much, like I said, as it used to be. But I did get out again to GABF this year, and just being able to see what people are bringing there and going to pubs there, or if I'm in Florida or in Brooklyn or traveling around. I think one of the things that you are seeing is the experimentation is down compared to previous years, and there's a whole host of reasons for that. But like you noted, battening down the hatches, what you're seeing is people brewing things not not just to try to attract crowds, but just try to like have them settle in and have a good time at reasonable alcohol points too. We're seeing certainly a rise in double IPAs and 19.2 ounce, 8% alcohol bangers in convenience stores and stuff like that. But every brewery now, large or small, has a lager or two on tap. Or if not more, and they seem to be exploring that more and more in places you would never seem to expect. And I think, these lagers are oftentimes of varying quality and character, but it's such a radical change from a decade or so ago, where all of these breweries might have had a blonde ale or a golden ale that they didn't really give any thought to, and they just had it out there for people who really didn't like beer, or at least that's what they thought. Now they're exploring a lot of different lager styles, and I think part of the reason for that, frankly, I hate to have to keep coming back to Notch, but I think there could be an argument to be made for the rise of lager in this country having a lot to do with the arrival of the Lucre faucet, the side, the sort of the slow pour in some places or fast pour in other places. Not looking to get into the debates of how that particular thing should be used, but you're seeing dive bars installing Lucres and plenty and most breweries having at least one side pull available. And like I said,
was that earlier this year that I got that press release about the dive bar in Brooklyn that was pouring High Life on the Lucre?
Yeah, and we have gone inside the looking glass here. I mean, it's ridiculous. And if you want to have an entertaining couple of minutes, you can just get the founder and brewer at Notch, Chris Loring, who was the first person to bring into this country, the Lucre faucet, and really through social media and just his dedication to it has really grown it. And he still laments the fact that he didn't get the import license for it, because he would have made a lot more money than he does with the brewery.
Yeah. But
it has just become to the point where there are dozens, if not hundreds, of brewers around the country who have a Lucre tattoo on their body. It's just such a thing. But I think that people saw that, and it gave them an excuse to, or a reason to enter into lager and to think it was cool. And obviously it took off on Instagram and things like that, and TikTok. But now lager is really here. It's it's the year of the lager. It's always been the year of the lager. But I'd say this past year, you go into any smaller brewery, and they're going to take the time to make a lager or two, and it's not temporary. Those handles are there to stay.
Lauren, earlier you mentioned the conversations that you're having center a lot around innovation, but also resilience. And, in the beer space, at least right now, there's a lot of worry. There's a lot of, we're seeing a lot of small breweries, announce that after 5 or so years, or even shorter or longer in some cases, that they're shutting down. I think Cambridge Brewing Company is a little bit of an outlier on that, because 35 years is a hell of a run. But when you talk about resilience, what's the worry that you're seeing from the wine space, from the spirit space, headed into this year?
That's a good question. I think that the worry is, I think actually the worry is common across all categories. And unfortunately, it's that other categories are taking their share. Because we're just seeing it's by no means even, but we are seeing an evening out of the pie of different categories of consumables, and people not necessarily carrying with their purchases the category exclusivity that perhaps more dominated purchases in the market. Again, people I think are just generally a little bit more open to drinking different beverages and at different times for different needs. So I think in terms of, wine, they're worried about infused beverages. They're worried about spirits. In terms of spirits, they're worried about other categories. So everyone's just sort of carrying this side eye look at other categories, if you will, which is why I think so many people are being a little bit smart and looking into those diversification offerings within their own or under their own roof, wherever that makes sense and can be done well. But I think also the underlying concern for everybody is just this moderation is great, but this sort of temperance neo-prohibitionism movement is a little alarming, more than a little alarming to a lot of producers. And I think that that's going to be a big conversation and a big topic to watch coming forward in 2025.
So ways to watch these things and ways to pay attention to this. I'm going to move us over to the media part of this conversation because Lauren, you're doing something really cool with Full Pour in that you have an actual print magazine in 2025, which is amazing and heartening in a lot of ways. And Andy and I are working to grow All About's digital presence and podcast presence and bring people in regularly to read what's going on our scope of things. But how's it been going with Full Pour, and what's the response been? And people still want news about this or features about this industry, right?
I believe so. I think so. The response has been great. You can say it. It's a bit of a questionable move to be doing a print product in 2025 or 2023 when we first launched. But I believe in the power of print, and I think that there's something special to that tangible experience and to, escaping away from the screens for a little bit with something for some me time. And, I like to sort of poke fun here and there and say, hashtag make America read again. Like, let's get back into some of the stories. Roundups are great. Reviews are fine. All of these things that have sort of dominated our very limited attention span and quick take world of social and a lot of online articles, certainly not all about beer, but other platforms. It all has a space and a place, but again, I think that there's something really exciting, rewarding, and special about long form stories about why we drink what we drink, where it came from, the history behind it, the culture, who's making it, their stories, how they get into it, all of those amazing things. Because I think today a lot of consumers are looking with their dollars to have conscious consumerism, right? Tough funds are limited, and we want to spend where we believe in the product and we believe that it's making a difference. So I think the more that we can get into those stories and again, why we should support a product, drink a product, enjoy a product, how we got to this space, that's sort of the world that I live in. But yeah, I mean, journalism overall, it's just an interesting time, not just in the drink space, but certainly for everybody. So, we're all a bit mad perhaps for living in this world, but hey, someone's got to do it because we need it. We need free speech. We need independent journalism, no matter what the subject is, and the stories have to be told. So here we are doing what we can, but I think it's again a challenging landscape and time in terms of appreciation and value for that work. And unfortunately, there is a bit of a tough road ahead in terms of remembering the importance of journalism and media, independent media, and assigning the value to it because not everything is free and not everything can be done for free.
And I think you need to be
Yeah,
seriously applauded for taking the steps to, first of all, start an independent publication, and not just work through existing legacy media brands and to bring in new voices and to take that entrepreneurial step, but also to do it in print. I mean, both John and I are kind of old school print folks. Like, I have an actual journalism degree with a focus. My major was in magazine journalism, which seems like no one must have that kind of degree anymore. But as I've sort of withdrawn from kind of social media, sort of following the downward tilt of Twitter into X, I've started actually subscribing to print magazines again. Something that I hadn't done in a long time. And sort of looking around for what print magazines to subscribe to, you're kind of, the landscape is certainly not what it once was. But I've started just with regional magazines. So whether it's
Yeah.
Boston Magazine or Chicago Magazine, cities I don't even live in, because they're pretty good deals. You can get them for 10, $12 a year. They're still probably way less, in terms of price than they should be. And I'm just, going offline to read. I'm not doing the death scrolling. And then something I did yesterday was, I went through both the lists of the North American Guild of Beer Writers and the British Guild of Beer Writers, and I just basically printed out a lot of the winning articles to sort of go through and read them, because a lot of them have beautiful photos and they're great online, but I'm just interested in reading the words at this point and doing it in a way that takes me away, like you said, from the screen, whether it's a laptop or my phone, and just sitting with them and not being distracted by other notifications or switching out of it to look at Instagram or something like that. And I think you're right. There are I think every time somebody says something like this, it's always true. But this is one of the most important times there is for journalism, and in these spaces where we are seeing the alcohol, the beverage alcohol industry having such flux. There is so many there's so many stories to tell of all of the producers and the folks behind these brands, but also just with the trends and just so many things happening. The Brewers Association yesterday, for example, the trade organization that represents small and independent brewers, released, had a presentation talking about the numbers for 2024. And, for the first time in more than 2 decades, the number of openings was lower than the number of closings. That's an insane statistic. And, if there's nobody out here to talk about that, to talk about the impacts of changes in consumer consumption patterns, or just to talk about what these individual breweries are doing, I think, it is a serious loss. And I think what we are all trying to do here is to prove something that seems impossible, which is that people still care about these products and they still want to read about the people and the people behind them. And I think we're all dedicated to that. So I want to congratulate you on a year and a half, 2 years into this, and wish great success in 2025.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think unfortunately, we might be getting to a bit of a space where it takes losing something to realize what you have and appreciate, how it's there and how it's gotten there. And I think in the case of some of the closings, I think in the case of consolidation in journalism, I think in some of the losses of jobs and platforms, we're going to see people have a bit of that, oh shit moment. Like, if I don't support this in whatever capacity I can, that makes sense, it's going to be gone. And then what? So I think that's a little bit of the apex point that we're at right now. And hopefully we'll continue in a positive direction in all those questions.
Well, because we're all terrible at promoting our own stuff, except for Andy, who I'm going to let do that in a second. I will say go to full-pour.com, where you can subscribe to Lauren's magazine, because it's amazing and it's great and it's quarterly, and the paper stock is great, and the mission behind it is excellent. And I look forward. It's one of the few magazines in the drink space that's still printed, that doesn't immediately go into the recycling pile when it shows up. So full-pour.com, right? I got that right. So go and subscribe.
Thanks, John.
Hey, Andy, promote us.
Sure, always happy to. So at All About Beer,
enthusiasm.
I mean, if I have to, I guess. But it's the last couple of months. I've been doing some traveling around, talking to folks in the industry, and it's just kind of remarkable how few voices there are out there anymore covering beer. We've seen so many publications close, and frankly, even just conversations online. Some of these old school sites like Rate Beer are now going out of existence. So the places where conversations happen in the media or in social media about beer seem to be really quieting down. maybe there's not as much innovation as there once was, but we're still finding. I have a massive list of stories that I'd like to write, just to be able to find the time. And there's no shortage of interesting people and interesting products and interesting places to cover. In this year, I've had a chance to sort of go longer on some of these topics, and I think one of the ones I'm most proud of in terms of my work is of exceed. I mean, there isn't an adjective to describe how long this piece was. Lauren, would you be interested in publishing a 14,000 word profile about a beer guy, a beer writer?
Totally.
Yeah, that seems like a really wise idea, and that's something that we did this year. I wrote an article about Alex Kidd from Don't Drink Beer, who is sort of a singular voice in the world of craft beer, and he is a fascinating character. And this is a detailed history, almost a biography of him, and it was just incredibly long. And we have obviously online have the ability to do that, but if we don't have the forums anymore to and also the time and importantly the resources, because producing all of this isn't free. We pay our writers as you do. We pay the illustrators, we pay the photographers. We occasionally try to pay ourselves, and hopefully we'll be able to do more so in the new year. But we think that there's this is a vital industry that has fascinating characters and fascinating products, and we are both of us have been writing about craft beer for a very long time in the beer industry more generally, and I think we're just as passionate as we always have been. That's we always have conversations about on the business side, things can be tough, trying to get people to understand and appreciate the importance of journalism, let alone financially support it, especially in an era where there are so many different distractions, whether it be social media, television, Netflix, whatever it might be. There's a lot of different ways people can spend their time. So we always greatly appreciate it when they spend it with us, and even more so when they're able to financially support the work we're doing so that we can also support other voices in this industry.
And that website's allaboutbeer.com/support. Thanks, Andy.
Sure.
So for everybody who's listening right now, in the 2 or so minutes that we have left, what do you or where do you encourage them to go and experience in the drink space in 2025? Lauren?
Wherever their heart and their palate desires. I mean, it's a beautiful time to pick up a drink. It's always a good time for a drink, but I think now especially of whatever, pleases your palate and strikes your fancy, because there's just so many delicious beverages out there of all different kinds and makes and types. So just embrace what feels right to you. And I would just encourage people to lean into the stories behind those beverages, lean into the makers, understand where they came from, why they're brewing or distilling or fermenting what they're making. Because chances are it'll just give you an extra level of enjoyment, and there's stories to be shared. And that's how we just continue to embrace the culture overall. So that would be my takeaway, is just to, lean into all of that great information that's out there.
And do you want to tell people to go to Notch?
No, I would just tell them, get out of the house.
Yeah.
A lot of the times we either drink at home or we don't drink at home. But I think part of it is, so many years of being cooped up at home, and the numbers in whichever trade that we represent, that we write about, bear this out. Folks just are not going out as much, and you don't need to go out for 3 or 4 like you might have once upon a time. But just even stopping out for a quick one in a place that you haven't been to, or just a quick hour out with a friend, or even just to sit with a book and have a drink. Especially going into the month that we're going into here in January. Though frankly, I have not heard as much about dry January as I once did. Maybe.
Oh man, get into my inbox.
Oh, it's alive and well, Andy.
No,
Don't worry.
man.
It's funny. It's been quieter for me at least, which I'm fine with. But I would just like to see folks,
daily, yeah.
see folks get out and Just see what's out there, see what people are doing, and support these producers, whether it's a local wine bar or local tap room, local distillery, whatever it might be. Just get out there and just try to support these industries and these tradespeople.
Yeah, especially this month. Go support, if it's part of your plan, go support local breweries, local bars this month. Go find something new because they need you in January. And I'm just going to tell people to go to Little Beers this year, which is going to be on Saturday, March 29th. So we will be there, and it is really, I think, one of the great premier beer festivals with a very chill vibe, great breweries, great beers, and just a town that's charming as fuck. So go there on March 29th. And hey, thanks to you two. Thanks for kicking off the new year on the show, and for the insights and hanging out.
Thanks for the great conversation as always, guys. Appreciate it.
And thanks for everything you do, John.
The worst. What do you want to do or drink in 2025? Do you have any resolutions? How about questions, comments, guest suggestions? Tell me all about it. You can email me. It's John Holl, JOHNHOLL, @allaboutbeer.com. I do my best to respond to every email, so please reach out. And the only way that we can keep doing this show or other shows or pay writers for original articles is with your help. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. A reminder, go visit allaboutbeer.com. You can check out the podcast page, the merch page, all of our new content, as well as our archives, which go all the way back to 1979. If you have a beer question, wondering about history, it's all there. Follow All About Beer on social media @allaboutbeer. And before we go, here's a word from this week's sponsors.
Attention brewers, registration is now open for the 2025 Best of Craft Beer Awards. This is a BJCP sanctioned competition judged by fellow brewers and industry leaders. It uses a unique set of style guidelines that champions harmonious and dynamic beers. Held in beautiful Central Oregon, it's the third largest professional brewing competition in North America and is an opportunity to have your hard work evaluated and rewarded. In addition to traditional and specialty beer styles, new this year is the hop water category. Register your beers through January 31, 2025 by visiting bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register. Don't delay. Learn more and get your beers signed up by visiting bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register.
Today's episode is sponsored by Stomp Stickers. Stomp is a proud member of the Brewers Association that produces a wide variety of printed brewery products, such as beer labels, keg collars, coasters, beer boxes, and much more. Stomp's website features an easy-to-use digital design tool, low quantity orders, fast turnaround times, and free domestic shipping. Visit stompstickers.com and use code BREWER for 15% off of your first order. Please don't forget about the All About Beer podcast channel. Just search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday. The BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And make sure you check out probrewer.com each week for original articles from the All About Beer team. As for this show, Nate Schweber does our music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.